So what I wanted to kick us off with is just a little bit of an acknowledgement that what we mean with light nutrition and with Make Light Matter, the whole point of all of this is for us as individuals. And as you can see from this sort of montage of people, we've got people of all ages and races. And really, we've all got our own individual light nutrition needs. What we mean by that is when we've got different chronotypes, so whether you're an early bird or a night owl, what environment you're spending time in, so whether we're working from home, we're working from offices, or we're based in schools, universities, colleges, nursing homes, wherever we are, hospitals, prisons even, and what the quality of lighting is, how big the windows are, how the place is decorated, all of that matters. And it all impacts on us as individuals and our own light nutrition needs and getting those needs met. Again, geography, so a similar sort of latitude to where I am in the UK at the moment, some of you may be elsewhere, but similar latitudes in the UK will expect to have very different changeable seasons. So our day length changes quite dramatically through the course of the year. And some people are quite susceptible to that. So moving on to that next point about seasonality, certainly for seasonal affective disorder, I experience that myself. I have the bipolar disorder variant. And if you are genetically prone to that, and maybe thinking styles and things like that, then you will experience more seasonality. You may get more seasonal affective disorder, and just generally how easily it is, it seems to be for your circadian rhythm to be disrupted. And for demographics, again, some of our, the research shows that women are much more prone to seasonal affective disorder. So in the reproductive years, it's a level of 4-1 to men. It's for children and for older adults that have passed menopause, it's the same, it's 1-1. But for some reason in the reproductive years, they think it's hormonal based, then women will experience it at 4-1. And 80% of SAD sufferers are women. And then also if you're with your demographic in terms of your race as well, if you have a darker skin, particularly for South Asian people in this country in particular, we have about 52% of the population will be vitamin D deficient in the winter months. And it just in general, the population will be about 1/3. And so light really matters to us. It affects every single cell in our bodies because if it comes in through our eyes, it impacts on the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the brain, which is like the master clock that keeps everything going. I like to think about it like an orchestra. So you have a conductor, you've got this master clock, and if the conductor gets out of time and out of sync, then everything else starts to go out of whack as well, and we're all playing out of tune in our own bodies and our brains. And so, as I've said, it's very individual. And one of the things that I sort of say is a watchword for us with Make Light Matter, and what we're trying to do is help people to understand just how individual this is, and then also get them to have enough flexibility to meet their own light nutrition needs. And so I've covered a couple of these statistics already. Seasonal affective disorder, typically in the UK, the last bit of research that was done asking people about this, it found that 1 in 3 of us, nearly 1 in 3, so 29%, have seasonal affective disorder. And it's actually on a continuum or a bell curve, if you like. It's kind of normally distributed at this latitude. So you'll expect at this latitude to see anything up to 10% of the population experiencing a clinical level of seasonal affective disorder. But you'll have many more people, as I say, it's a normal sort of distribution curve. So you'll have many more people experiencing what we know as the milder form, so winter blues or subsyndromal SAD. And then vitamin D deficiency, again, it's quite hard to pin down, particularly because there's a lot of controversy in the field about what is deficiency. And actually deficiency is you as an individual, so it's, and it changes so often as well. So you can be deficient quite quickly as you enter the autumn and winter months, but you might not have ever been deficient at other times in your life. You might have just spent more time indoors during summer, used more sunblock, for example. So it's quite hard to pin down with vitamin D deficiency, but the latest statistics seem to suggest that around about 1/3 of us can expect to be vitamin D deficient in the UK in the autumn and winter months. But as I've said, if you have a darker skin, if you can't get outdoors, or if you cover your skin, if you wear a burqa, for example, then you would expect to find much higher levels of vitamin D deficiency. Sleep disturbance, again, it's, difficult to pin down, particularly with COVID as well. Then obviously it's skewing results, but the Sleep Charity report that was done last year in April suggested that 77% of people are experiencing effects the next morning. So when they're finding their sleep disturbed, and then they're finding it difficult to continue with their normal lives and get everything done that they need to do. And on a similar note, social jet lag. So if we are living out of whack with our chronotype, so if we've got maybe a late chronotype, we're more like a night owl, and we're forced to get up early in the morning because of our job or school, then we quite often want to sleep in on the weekend and try and catch up with that sleep. But what it does is it sets our body clock out of sync with the day, and we're just constantly changing things around. So most of us, 88% of people that did the chronotype questionnaire with Teal Rosenberg will find that they are experiencing social jet lag as well. And of course, all these conditions lead into much, these are all serious conditions anyway, but they lead to much longer chronic physical symptoms like heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer. So these are really a big deal, and this is why we're really looking at this and why we're interested in it. And where do you fit in as a professional? So this is, you can see this is the Make Light Matter logo, but what I like about what we've done with the logo is that it very much encapsulates this ecosystem that we see. So the research that I've been doing in this field, when I've started to look into it, I've realized just how complex it actually is. Because of course, we're all individuals, you, me, everybody, we're all individuals. We all have our own individual light nutrition needs. But then some of you as professionals are then trying to look after people that, in your environment. So where we spend our time, whether we're at home and we've got a little bit more control over our environment, or whether we may be in, other environments like an employer, or some of the other places that I mentioned earlier, and how much control they have over their environment. So if the building is rented, they might not have much control over those systems, but they do have control over things like, do you put a filing cabinet in the window? Do you put massive plants in the window and block all the light? Do you have the blinds down constantly and nobody ever pulls them back up again? So that sort of thing. And the blind wars, we're all kind of familiar with that. And then he controls the environments as well. So if we don't have control over our environments, and our employers or whoever is, sort of renting that building or owns that building, if they don't have control, who does? And so some of you, again, may be people that have control over their environments in a more, architects, for example, building service engineers. And so we're kind of coming up another level to the people that design and manage buildings. And then beyond that, obviously, at the much more sort of societal level, we've got the building and health policies that we have. So do we have health policies that help us to be well, or do they stop us just being sick? And there's a big difference there. And one of the things I found of particular interest when I started to look into this field was that with the lighting in particular, we don't have lighting principles in law that looks after our well-being. It's only our safety. So it's only the health and safety aspects that we're looking at. We don't look at the well-being principles of light, which I found incredibly interesting, because I thought that would be quite obvious, but it's apparent, it's really not. So something to think about as you go into your discussions: where do you fit in that ecosystem, and how would we want to change things? So some of the challenges we've got, through the conversations I've had with people, and it's across lots of different industries, which is partly what this event is about, bringing you all together, is the lack of awareness. And it's at all levels. So that ecosystem I just mentioned, it's at all levels of that ecosystem. And again, quite surprisingly, but then also a lack of joined up thinking. So as you'd imagine, if the levels of awareness are low, even as us as individuals of our own light nutrition needs and how light affects us individually, then we're not really talking about it cross profession, cross industry. We're all in our own lane, and that's not criticism. It's just how things are. We get kind of stuck in our own lane, and we don't get to meet maybe a psychologist or a HR director or whatever. And then we've got trust issues. So some of you, really don't have to spell this out to you. You'll know it very well. There's a lot of bandwagons that have been going on in the past, still going on now. And this circadian health is due to be another great big one. So there's going to be circadian everything, which is exciting in many respects because it's great that it's getting recognised. But I think that there's a big potential for people to take advantage of some of that lack of awareness to kind of sell products and services that are not really needed. And then we've got, again, I'm not going to go into these in depth, but life cycle planning and value engineering. You'll be very familiar with those terms if you're working in the building industries and the lighting industry, which many of you are. And again, it's all about money, so particularly for organizations, of course, it comes down to money. That's not a bad thing. We just need to understand how to kind of get past these kind of challenges. And then we've got changing lifestyles. Of course, we've got, this sort of 24/7 culture developing. And, it's difficult because you might want to say, oh, well, just don't live your life that way. But then you become an outcast, essentially. If you're not living in alignment with how society lives, you become an outcast. And not many people want to be like that. So we've got changing lifestyles. We're spending more time indoors. And we've got to look at that as well. And so I just want to finish up because I realise that I'm kind of going on a little bit and I want to give you loads of time to talk. I just wanted to finish up with some basics for everybody because, we've heard of self-care. We've heard about, putting on your own oxygen mask before you help other people. And that's something that I really would encourage for you to do as well. And it's something that I have to do every day as well, is that, if we're experiencing seasonal affective disorder, vitamin D deficiency, circadian disruption of any kind, then we're not at our best. We feel flat and down. We don't have as much energy. And then we're not giving our best to our profession. We're not giving our best to our families and our careers and society as a whole. So we all need, as individuals, to remember that we're an individual first. And we've got to look after our light nutrition needs. So some basics, you can read them there on the screen. Morning daylight, obviously, as often as you can. Sitting, standing near a window as much as you possibly can. Just getting a bit creative as well about how you do that. So, things like vestibule areas, receptions and stuff like that can actually be the brightest places in buildings, I've often found. But they're not often used for people to sort of sit and use. They're kind of more of a fleeting place. Obviously, making sure it's as dark as possible and the nighttime when you go to bed. So sleep in as much darkness as you can, because the real thing that we need to do is help our bodies get a really strong light cue. So that's hence the light in the morning. But we also really need strong dark cues as well. So we need to have that kind of contrast as high as possible so that our bodies understand what time of day it is. When we're spending time indoors, under a continuous level of light all the time, it's really difficult for our brains and our bodies to understand what time of day it is. And that's where we'll end up with things like seasonal affective disorder going on. And of course, if we don't get sunlight, we get vitamin D deficiency as well. So sticking to a routine as well, of course. I mean, if you do have particularly a bipolar variant of seasonal affective disorder, then the routine is incredibly important. So